All right, so this is Maya. She just
Okay.
returned from a rally to open up California. How many people were at the rally?
I would estimate about 200 to 300, maybe. It was in San Clemente. It was Orange County. So it was a very nice rally. There were quite a few people that turned up. Very peaceful, very positive as far as messaging.
I
Just
hope it
things
wasn't
like,
coronavirus
my
positive.
my constitutional rights are essential, etc. I'm sorry, what was the question?
I just said, you said it was positive. I hope they weren't testing positive.
No, no, they were not.
Were there
We're
masks
outside in
and
the sunshine.
social
Lovely.
distancing or not so much?
I think it was like normal. I mean, it wasn't like people were like holding hands or hugging or anything, but it wasn't like there was a tape measure between people for 6 feet or anything like that. No.
Okay.
But people had masks on if they felt like they were too close to people, they would have masks on. Again, we were outside in the sunshine, so masks weren't really going to do anything other than make you not be able to breathe. And people like me with my glasses fold up, so I'm outdoors. I don't bother wearing it. I don't see a point for it.
Louder, louder.
Okay, so
Maya,
Yeah.
we've been interrupting you with questions. I bet you've got something to say, being a modern Jewish woman. Why don't you speak up real loud and tell us your thoughts?
Okay, so are you asking specifically about the rally or just
No,
in
we want to
general
know. We
the
want to
whole
know.
lockdown coronavirus related?
Yeah, what do you think about all this?
Well, in my opinion, I think the lockdown was complete overreaction and unnecessary, and I think it is borne by the fact that we don't have right now 6 weeks in we don't force because we started
All right.
the
um,
predictive modeling and
We're
okay, you're
losing
gonna
you,
have to
Maya.
repeat. You're
die
you're freezing up hugely.
con- counting already are
Um,
um,
should one
Maya,
of
we
the
can't hear you. Maybe if she turned off her
okay.
visual, her camera, would that
There you are. You
help,
guys are back. Okay.
director?
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 Do you want to turn it off?
Well, wait, what if I lost my visual? People don't need to look.
Yeah, maybe we should both turn off our visual. I'm going to turn off mine.
Okay, I'm off. All right, now let's see how that works. Maya,
Okay.
Okay, Maya, I
And
don't think that's
basically,
going to work
yeah, go
out.
ahead.
All right, speak.
Well, I can hear you guys fine, but okay.
well, I don't know. That last sentence was okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, like I said, up until now it was just fine. Okay.
No, you're good. You're
Are we
good
coming
right
back?
now. Let's
I think
well,
I've
let's
lost a
see.
visual
Let's
in you
see.
guys, but I can
Say
hear
what
you.
you.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Speak.
Okay. So yeah. So anyway, so basically, I was going back to the fact that the predictive modeling that we had was completely off by many orders of magnitude. And I think the fact that we now have 6 weeks of solid data that we can look at and say we were nowhere near the estimates and it's not nearly as bad. And I think the lockdowns were probably motivated by, if it's not at least, at the very least political, but worse, just absolute unnecessarily, what's the word I'm looking for? It was just oppressive on levels that, because again, if we're going to be Trump stamping all over people's rights, there has to be a really, really good reason for it. And I don't see it because right now we have actual data that we can look at and we can see that it's not nearly as bad as we predicted it. And yet we're still locking down. We're still forcing people to do things that are absolutely unnecessary. And that's basically where I land on the issue, is that I think it's oppressive and trampling over people's rights for absolutely unnecessary overreaction
Well,
and fear mongering, really.
do you want to get rid of, you just throw out all shutting down, or are you okay with, like, say restaurants open up but with only 50% occupancy for a while?
Well,
Like,
that's actually very. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, that's, I'm,
Oh,
Go ahead, Maya.
yeah, I'm sorry. Let me interrupt you. Well, right. So what I wanted to say was that I think, especially for restaurants, since you brought up specifically restaurants, they've been hurt so much already that I think forcing them to only, and as you know, probably that restaurants operate on such a narrow margin of profit anyway. Now you're going to cut their clientele by 50 or 70% or whatever in order to accomplish the social distancing. I think that's just going to continue hurting them, and I don't see how that would really accomplish anything. There is a way to go back when you can say, okay, clean surfaces, or do additional cleaning, or if you want to wear masks inside, even though it makes no sense because you're talking about food. There, I think in general, it just needs to be reopened. Let the people who are at risk, people who are, with underlying conditions, et cetera, let them go ahead and continue with whatever precautions they feel are necessary, while allowing everybody else to take responsibility for themselves, like we've always had. I mean, just 2 years ago, our flu season killed over 60,000 Americans, and we still continue to do everything that we always did. So you're always supposed to not go out in public when you're sick, and you're always supposed to wash your hands, etc. So that notwithstanding, I think the way to treat people as adults and as responsible citizens, and just let them be the free people that we've always been, and let them have the freedom to choose. If I feel like if I am healthy and I am well enough to go outside, then I should be able to do that. Of course, if I have a cough or whatever, I should stay away from people and cover my mouth and all this other stuff. But that's normal. I think the damage that we're causing with these shutdowns is far, far greater, and the ripple effect is going to continue, and is going to go on. It's not an immediate thing, right? We've all known that, we shut down the economy real quick, but it's not going to restart just like a light switch, right? So we're going to see the ramifications of it continue, and people are going to suffer. I personally know businesses that are not coming back. All the domestic violence that's happening, all the alcohol abuse and drug abuse and suicides and everything, the emotional distress that this is causing for people is also has to be taken into account, and it hasn't been. We're only talking about COVID patients. We're forgetting about the people who need knee surgery, or I needed to see a dentist recently, and it was I had to wait 10 days before I could be seen, etc. I mean, it's really far and wide, to the point where I think we're really causing far more damage. People are actually afraid. They've been so scared into being afraid of this virus that even if they are having chest pain, they're not going to the ER because they've been told that the COVID-19 will kill them more so than chest pain. I mean, think about how absurd that is, and yet that's where we're at.
so I'd argue that since as you've argued, that we've been
Mm-hmm.
conditioned to kind of be scared over the past 6 weeks, that um, I wouldn't feel comfortable going into a restaurant even before they closed down the restaurant. The last restaurant my wife and I went to, like a day or two before they closed everything, was P.F. Chang's, and we went at 4:30 in the afternoon because we were
Okay.
already pretty nervous, and we knew at 4:30 that that it wouldn't be crowded, and I wouldn't want to go to a full occupancy restaurant right now. And how would you feel about restaurants opening up? Maybe you leave maybe you leave occupancy up to the individual restaurants. But what about saying you can open up, but you got everybody, wait staff and kitchen staff, everybody has to wear masks.
Well, then, yeah, that's acceptable. And I think also you kind of touched on it in the beginning, is when you said that was your choice. You chose to go or not to go. And I think that's kind of where it has to be. Again, we have to go back to the free citizens that we always have been, and make the choice for ourselves. So if you feel uncomfortable, by all means, don't go, or if you feel like it's too crowded, or if the restaurant wants to limit the people or require them to wear masks or whatever the case may be, absolutely. But it has to be an individual choice. And
right. What about
if they need
idiots?
to stay home, let them stay home. If they feel they are comfortable to go outside, whether it's a bar. Look, there's always going to be idiots. You cannot make public policy wait on idiots alone. There are idiots.
Well, like Coachella. I'm not saying everybody who goes to Coachella is an idiot, but that's like 100,000 people altogether. Many of whom are like tripping and just
right,
or drunk or whatever.
Well, of course, but you have idiots who drink and drive, right? So you have a drunk person getting into a car and driving. That's an idiot, and he should be punished if he gets into a car accident. And of course, if he he can harm himself and he can harm others. But we don't take everybody's car away because there are some idiots who drink and drive.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a difference between frickin' P.F. Chang's opening up and bringing back Coachella like in a month, which won't happen.
So I'm not saying.
Still.
I mean, that's true. It won't happen. That's exactly it. It won't happen. And I'm not saying it's a free for all. We should all go to a concert right now. But at the same time, I think the restrictions have been so intense and so severe that people are naturally fighting against it because they're not being reasonable. The restrictions in some places are so completely disrespectful of the people that the only reaction is to be disrespectful back. Kind of like, what you saw in Michigan, the whole well, you can go to a store that's already open, but the seeds and the gardening supplies are roped off because they're, for some reason, all of a sudden are unsafe.
All right, I have one more question. One more question, which is, what do you say to the argument that because the lockdowns have been so lockdowny, that's why the estimates for what was going to happen turned out to be maybe not accurate, that we've been so good at keeping ourselves from getting infected that's why things have been going better than expected?
Well, okay, so that's kind of trying to argue a counterfactual, right? Except for the fact that we do have a little bit of control group in countries like Sweden and some of the states that didn't completely shut down. But also, even if we didn't have those, I would argue that, you can say if none of the mitigating factors none of the mitigating actions that we are taking have been factored in to the original models, then you can say maybe that's the reason. But I know that some of them have been. And even if they haven't been, the orders of magnitude that we went from 2.2 million to 250,000 to like 80 or 90,000, and with the same week they brought it down to like 60,000. I mean, so many orders of magnitude. You cannot say, well, it's because we've been so good. Or, I mean, I suppose you could say, but at the same time, like I said, we are trying to argue a counterfactual that you will never be able to say.
Well, we're going to pass. We're going to pass 60,000 in 3 or 4 days, and we're going to get to 80,000 and 90,000, before the end of May. So, I mean, those numbers are still in play. Maybe not the 250.
Go ahead.
And the 2.2 million was just if we went crazy and just everybody continued like the spring breakers on Daytona Beach, drinking beer out of each other's butt cracks. That.
Well, that's a bad idea anytime.
Yeah.
that's never a good idea.
Unless you're 19 and you're a virgin, that's that. A boy virgin, like girls. Anyway.
One thing that Maya said was that those models did take into account it. All right.
I know. I'm okay because
those models did take into account us mitigating and locking down. So a lot of those models took into account what if we all shut ourselves away, and they still said we were going to have 500,000 dead. And they were obviously wrong. And and Maya has used the same examples I have. There are states all across the United States that didn't shut down. Not a lot of them, but they're fine. So we don't know if this lockdown is working. And not only that, but more and more, it's turning out that sunlight is very dangerous to the life of this virus. And I'm actually thinking that it might be just fine to open up the country and just have people go out in the sun like they do after every flu season my entire life. And furthermore, uh, uh, I'm sorry, I forgot what I was going to say.
All right,
Uh,
well, let me say something about, so maybe we get a respite for the summer. Are you okay with tightening things up in the fall? Like
no, no,
in
this is
in the
insane.
Spanish with the span. Hold on, let me just make my point. Then you can jump on it. With the Spanish flu, it got less severe in the summer, and then people relaxed, and it came back and kicked everybody's butts in winter again. So anyway, go ahead.
Can I reply?
Well,
Yeah.
wait, no, I do remember what I was going to say.
Go ahead.
On the note of would you eat in a restaurant, I said this last week, but it bears repeating. They interviewed a doctor um, that was doing nothing but watching COVID patients die and medically treating them day in, day out, week after week. And they asked her, would you go to a restaurant? She said, yeah, because these people are coming in, they're already sick with other illnesses. These people were not going to survive this year anyway. She was basically saying she's watching morbidly obese people and people that are in their 90s and people that have respiratory ailments. She said this is not a disease that is typically striking 30-year-old people in good health. And in fact, a lot of these scientists are saying that the dumbest thing we did was shutting down the schools because that would have increased our herd immunity. Because the little kids hardly get it at all. If it, they're
Correct.
almost immune to it.
All
And
right, Maya,
and
go ahead, and then I'll say a thing.
No, I was going to say correct. You absolutely have to consider the comorbidity, all the other things, and also the fact that hospitals weren't allowed to treat any of the other illnesses. So again, like how many people are going without their chemo? How many people are going with, like I said before, with if they're having chest pains but they're afraid to go to the ER or whatever, and all the other things that happen when when you lost your job, when you have no other outlet for any of your energies, and what we were just now saying about closing down schools. That's probably the worst thing you could have done because you're not letting their immune system kick in and do what it needs to do. Same as you're suppressing the immune system of normal, regular adults. Because again, the 20 people in the 20s and 30s and 40s who have normal immune systems and who should be able to go out there and do whatever it is they do in their normal lives, you're now have taken away their ability to support their families in order to save somebody, as you just pointed out, who may not have lived out the month anyhow. So, and also let's not forget that, like in New York, when they were around 6.5, 7,000, they all of a sudden added like 4,000
Probables.
deaths that they thought, yeah, they said probable. We didn't test them. We're just guessing. So we know the numbers are being padded as well, because that's the other thing. Like I'm no longer believing almost any of the numbers that I'm seeing because I know they're being padded. And if you got somebody with stage 4 cancer and pneumonia and 18 other things, and by the way, they happen to be 93 years old, they didn't die from COVID. They may have died with COVID, but not from it.
Well, no, if you're teetering on the cliff and somebody pushes you over the fucking cliff, you're still guilty of murder for um but I gotta
That's
say, like, I don't have that many comorbidities. I'm in decent shape, but like looking at like Chris Cuomo, who's a frickin' animal. He, I've seen that guy. They've shown him training, and he can deadlift like. I've seen him walking around carrying like 800 pounds doing some weird exercise. He's a big old power lifter. Um, and he got it, and he was really sick. And like, even if it's not going to kill me, I don't want to be really sick for 10 days.
But you're
Then
going
don't
to
go
be
out, Rick. You
anyway.
can.
Well,
Thank
I
you.
would. I mean,
I
I'm
was going
I'm
to
a
say,
cancer guy. I had cancer last year, and I'm in good. I they say I'm cured, but still, I don't want to fuck around with it.
Maya,
well,
I
then by
have
all
some.
means, you should protect yourself. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, no, Maya, that's a good point. That's what I've been telling Rick. You want to shut yourself away? You go. You go ahead. Shut yourself off. That's fine. We'll go on with our lives. But Maya, I just want to tell you this because since the beginning of this virus, for almost 5 weeks now, I've been trying to convince Rick that there is something you can take called hydroxychloroquine with
All right,
Z-Pak
here we
and
go.
zinc. Don't interrupt me, Rick. And the weird thing about it is that the Democrats have convinced Rick that if he takes the proper dosage of
No, if I turn the camera on, we're all going to
hydroxychloroquine,
freeze again. There's only room for two frickin' people in this lifeboat.
okay, Rick.
No, come on, no. We froze last time. It's like it's
Anyway,
frickin' Kate Winslet and Leonardo DiCaprio and somebody. There's only,
okay, Rick.
somebody's going to drown.
Okay,
Yeah, all right, but if
anyway,
we all end
anyway,
up drowning,
the two things that Rick refuses to accept are that flu seasons tend to end when it gets hot, and my proof for this is that the coronavirus is practically non-existent in the really hot countries of the world today. That's the but beyond that,
well, hold on.
because
Fucking Mexico's a hot country.
wait.
No, but no,
Because wait,
Mexico's fucked
wait.
up right now.
It's not fucked up. We went
Brazil
over this
is,
last week. We went over this last week. We looked at the worldometer. Many of the hot countries in the world are just not getting this. But beyond that, all of Rick's arguments are based on his imagination that hydroxychloroquine with zinc and Z-Pak doesn't work. Because of that, if there is no cure, then Rick really has a reason to be afraid. But I have to say, given that there is a cure for 90% of the people that take it, I don't know, what do you think about that, Maya?
Well, I mean, I have heard doctors say that they've treated patients with it and they've done very, very well. Like they went from like being really sick to being really well in like 8 to 10 hours. There was one doctor that I've heard say that. But let me just get back real quick to the other point we were saying before is you're going to take a risk every time you step outside of your house. So that is a given. And when we said lockdown, the lockdown originally was said we were told to not overwhelm the system. We were supposed to lock down so that we can flatten the curve, correct? We've done that. The problem is that people forget that the area under the curve is still the same. So we just stretched it out. The people who are going to get sick from it are still going to get sick from it. They're just not going to get sick all at once and overrun the hospitals. And we know that the hospitals aren't overrun because
that part
they're
is
empty.
true, but it's not only do you squash the curve, but the area stays the same, but it doesn't stay the same if we can keep it so squashed that a vaccine can come in so that we don't need to get to herd immunity. If we can get a
But
vaccine by the end of the year, the early next year, and we've kept the curve kind of flat, we've saved a lot of people from having to get it if it's a decent
but
vaccine. Now, about hydroxychloroquine. So I have a couple things. One, the best study yet, and it's not a perfect study because studies take time. A study of 368 people came out, and you're going to say, because you've read, I'm sure, analyses of this study of people in the VA, and they were mostly pretty sick. And the people who got the chloroquine, 28% of them died versus 11% of the people who didn't get the chloroquine. You're going to say if people get it earlier, it's not as killy a thing. So we can have that argument. But another thing is just that using what we fucking know about about viruses and cures for viruses in general, and that viruses aren't a new problem.
Correct.
People have been, tens of millions of doctors have been treating viruses for more than a century, and tens of thousands of researchers have been working on viruses, respiratory viruses, for
Yeah.
frickin' generations. Now, so the idea that, and the coronavirus, and well, viruses in general don't get cured like bacterial infections. There's just the various remedies for viruses, short of vaccines, aren't as effective on viruses as shit is on bacteria. And so the idea that all of a sudden there would be this super duper cure that would suddenly show up for this newish virus is just unlikely given the whole history of viruses and virus treatment. And instead, and I've been saying this, that chloroquine is most likely an okayish cure the way all these other antivirals are.
Okay,
Um,
Rick, I'm going to
and one more
respond.
thing, you just accused me of saying that, of not believing that this might not get less serious in the summer. I've said it like 3 times so far in just this episode. There's a chance that the summer may give us a respite. I'm not I'm not brainwashed to the point where I'm denying that possibility.
Okay, my response is that, again, here's a great example of the media brainwashing you. Now, it's not that you're a stupid person, it's that the media lied and they made a big deal. I don't know why the media wants people to die by not using hydroxychloroquine. I don't know what interest they have in people being denied this cure.
Nobody's
Um,
being denied it, or
Rick,
maybe.
Rick, there are Democrat governors in Nevada and New York that have prohibited the use of hydroxychloroquine. They have prohibited it. This is a war crime. This is a war crime, Rick. Don't interrupt me. It's been prohibited. I don't know if it was Cuomo. I believe Cuomo prohibited it until further study, but
I think
Nevada
you're thinking
right
about
now is
Michigan.
prohibited.
I think you're thinking
What?
about Michigan. I think you're
All
thinking
right.
about Michigan.
Okay, fine. So several states, both, but my point is the VA study. They made a big. I knew that they were lying. So yes, Rick, I did read up on the VA study. It turns out that when they gave the people the hydroxychloroquine, they didn't use Z-Pak or zinc. It was just straight hydroxychloroquine, and
Nope.
no doctors are doing it that way. They use it with Z-Pak and zinc. And the second thing is this, Rick, I need to explain this to you because you're a smart guy. Get this virus and it's already collapsing your lungs. It's already tearing you to pieces. Even if they shove hydroxychloroquine into you, you'll still die. And that's what they found out with this study. Now, this wasn't the best study. It was 346 people that were already near death, whose body had been ravaged. And furthermore, the best study was done of 3,000 people in France. 3,000 people by Didier Raoult.
He's not the best study guy. He doesn't.
You
But
don't
anyway,
know that. You don't know that,
I
Rick.
know. I've read up on the guy.
Yeah, I know. The Democrat media, up until the time he became a champion for this cure, he was considered, I've said it in 6 weeks in a row, the foremost virologist in the world. I read his Wikipedia page the day of the article, and that's what they said about him. But the Democrats went to work on him, and now you're reading all these smearing articles about him. Why? Why is it that you want to be deceived? Now, if you don't take the results of Didier Raoult, there's a doctor. There's a doctor in New York who's I always forget his
Vladimir,
name. Zelensky, Dr. Zelensky. He's treated thousands of patients with hydroxychloroquine and zinc, and he's cured 90% of them.
That's bad. He's got a 10% non-cure rate. That's worse
Maybe
than
no,
if
no,
it's
no,
not
no, no,
treated at
no,
all.
no, no. Under normal circumstances, the study he's done, he's found that he's curing 5 times the rate that people are getting with similar cases than if they hadn't received hydroxychloroquine. Will you take 5 times the advantages, Rick?
I would, but
Is that good enough for you?
here's I stand by what I think, which is I think that hydroxychloroquine in combination with zinc will turn out to be an okayish treatment in among a bunch of okayish treatments because that's what you get for viruses. Maybe it turns out to even be the best among the okayish treatments.
No,
It's
I
not
have
a
a
miracle,
wait.
it's
No,
a
no.
treatment.
I have a point. If 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 the studies that I told you in the beginning showed that it was a point 1, point 2 fatality rate, the same as we get from flu, if it turns out that millions of Americans already have antibodies for this, and therefore it's 1,000 to 1 that you'll die from it, and then you take a drug that cures you 90% of the time, then that means it's 10,000 to 1 that you'll die from this thing. Will you take those odds, Rick? Will you leave the fucking house and walk around in the sunlight knowing that it's 10,000 to 1 that you're going to get this and die from it?
Nah, because I'm going off the statistics. Now, maybe the statistics have been updated that as somebody who's about to turn 60, if I get it, for my cohort, now maybe it's lower because I don't have diabetes or metabolic syndrome, but for people who are 60, 3.6% of the people who get it die. So no, I'm not going to take
That's
those
that's
odds.
that's not what these studies showed.
Well,
Okay, but here's my
I'm going to
question.
need to see better shit because I don't buy it yet. I mean, nobody's shown, given the studies are early on, they haven't shown miraculous results. The stuff that shows miraculous stuff is kind of overclaiming based on sloppy. I'm not convinced. I'm not saying that it's not decent, but I'm not saying that it hasn't been proven. I am saying that it hasn't been proven to be super great. Maya, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, right. So my question to you then is, you're willing to wait a year and a half or so, however long it takes to get a vaccine, which we know are not perfect. We have a flu vaccine. We still get between 30 and 60,000 deaths a year from the common flu, right? So you're willing to take those odds, but every year, right? This happens all the time. This is a seasonal thing. But you're saying that the chances that, I'm sorry, I skipped your name, not Rick, but
Rick.
Lance. I'm Lance,
yeah,
he's Rick.
lens, right? Yeah, that lens laid out is that it's going to take the odds of you taking a drug that maybe not stellar, maybe not perfect, but will make you better if you're not already on death's bed, right?
Yeah, no,
So,
I would definitely if 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 there's better info like if I had no other drugs but zinc plus hydroxy, I would
mm,
definitely take them. Well, up to a point because there are cardiac uh, it gives people some people arrhythmias. Would I
okay.
take it for Now, would I take it for 2 or 3 days where the odds of getting arrhythmias are lower? And somebody could show me that if you only take it for a couple days, that you're not that the odds of getting, I would try to maximize my odds, within reason. Am I never going to leave the house for the next year and a half because of a one chance in 10,000 of getting it? No, I'll go out and I'll try to be prudent. I'm not going to eat in crowded restaurants. Um, you know, but you know, yeah, I would take the stuff if it.
Yeah, can I interrupt for a minute, Rick? It turns out that study of people getting arrhythmia, I believe it was in Brazil. I read about that too. It turns out that I've said this before, Maya, the head of the Lupus Society, because hydroxychloroquine is the main drug for people that have lupus. So the head of the Lupus Society, a doctor, has distributed more hydroxychloroquine than anybody in the world, millions of doses. and at least anybody in the United States. He says it's as dangerous as Tylenol. He says that the reason that those people in the study started getting heart arrhythmia is because they were distributing massive doses to them. He says that in 40 years of distributing hydroxychloroquine, he's never seen anybody get heart arrhythmia if they were given proper dosages. Now, that point is irrelevant. My point is, why did they have to tell this to Rick? Why
Well,
do they
the
want to
people in the
frighten
VA
you?
study,
The
the
people
people
in the
who
VA study were old. They were sick. They already they were already at death's door, and they weren't given zinc and Z-Pak with it. So they were not properly administered. So
yeah, but
why is it that the media is convincing you of this? Why do they not want you to think that there's any treatment?
all right.
Sorry.
Are you somebody? Are you said? Can you go now?
No, it's all right. Go ahead.
Okay. No. I mean, I'm just saying. Like, I'm still. I mean, the reason the media reported those results is because those were the results of that study. They studied a bunch of people at the VA, and I'm sure a lot of them were old and a lot of them had comorbidities. But among the people they studied, they had a death rate of 28% versus 11% of the people who didn't get it. So, of course, they're going to report it. They're not going to not report it. And everybody said it's not the best study because, it was, people who are already pretty sick. I'm acknowledging all that. But and I've been saying all along, we got to wait for, I'll wait for better studies as long as I have the option to wait for better studies. If I'm lucky enough not to get it
Maya,
or not to get, if I don't get sick till frickin' September, then maybe I'll be lucky enough to have a better idea of what I want to be treated with.
Maya, you don't know this because you came on late, but I started the show by saying that there were 7 studies where they took representative samples of cities around the world, and they found that the chances of you dying from this are 1 or 2 or 3%, basically the same percentage as if you had the flu. These are from representative samples of 7 major cities, and even Governor Cuomo has acknowledged that 20% of the population of New York probably has this antibodies for it. So in other words, you understand, you're smart. If they find that the number is 50 times greater of people that have this, the odds of you dying from it makes it far, far lower. Right?
Correct.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, the ratio becomes smaller, yes.
But that doesn't impress Rick.
What I'm saying is, like, no, it's if a bunch of people have already acquired immunity, and we don't know for sure because these, it's early on, and nobody knows if you can get reinfected. But right now we're at 55,000, and I think we're going to get to double the worst, number of annual flu deaths in the last 50 years. The worst in the last 50 years was 60,000 deaths 2 years ago. That was the worst year for flu probably since 1968. Right. I think we're going to double it. I don't want us to double it, but I think we're on track to do that, which that's a lot of frickin' dead people.
Right. Well, it is, but it
Hold on, let Maya.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry. Can I? Well, sure. And it seems to be when Lance was asking Rick, like, why do you think the media wants people to die? I think in general, they've been playing opposite day with Trump from the beginning. So it didn't matter, if he said in January, at the end of January, when he said we need to restrict travel from China, and they called him a xenophobe, and they said he was being panicky, and it was unnecessary, and so forth. And of course, a month later, it's like, oh my gosh, we should have done this sooner. And of course, back in January, we had like a total of 100 cases in the entire country. and to argue for stronger response back then would have seemed completely unreasonable, and of course nobody would have gone along with it. So now when Trump says hydroxychloroquine may be a solution, how dare he tout that? And when Cuomo says hydroxychloroquine may be a solution, oh my God, what a hero! He's so. So I mean, they've been playing opposite day with him, and it's so obvious. I think at this point that you don't have to be a political analyst or any kind of. It has nothing to do with what your party affiliation is. It has strictly to do with just open your ears and listen to what and how they're saying it, right? So I think it necessarily it plays into, if Trump said it's good, then it's bad, and vice versa. And it doesn't even matter that, the facts are boring, that he was exactly right, that restricting travel from China was the correct thing to do, while Nancy Pelosi was, at the end of February still saying, come down to Chinatown. And, you had de Blasio telling his constituents to, go to see movies, and, here's my suggestions to which movies you should see, and et cetera and whatnot. And so, I mean, yes, that's necessarily part of it. It's hard not to see it. I think these days you're not actually allowed to agree with the president at all, or you're right away being labeled a xenophobe, a racist, et cetera, et cetera. And to pretend that the media hasn't been carrying water for Democrats while they're completely bashing and dismantling Trump for everything he says, doesn't matter. Like Joe Biden cannot string two sentences together, and they're pretending that everything is a hunky-dory and everything is 100% fine, while Trump says one thing and it's just like, oh my God, can you believe what he said? And then why would you say this? And why are you being so mean? And I mean, the fact that Trump has to stand there every day and call people out for being fake news, it's ridiculous, because they really are, and they're showing themselves to be that, and yet people are still buying it because, well, they're locked in their houses and they have nothing else to do or nothing else to see. But I think some of us are getting information from other places, and to pretend, like I said, to me, like for the longest time, I was like, I'm right down the middle. I don't care, And to me, like the more I listen to it, I'm just like, how can anybody go along with the Democratic Party line? Because, like I said, even if you look at just right now, like a couple of days ago, when Georgia announced that they're thinking about reopening and what the steps for that should be and how they should go about it. And right away, they were being torn up and down. How dare they even think about it? And Georgia wants to be this death destination, et cetera. And that was, of course, a Republican governor. And as soon as you have a Democrat governor in Colorado saying the exact same thing, and right away, it's like, oh, look at this wonderful measured approach, and they're being so smart. And so, I mean, it's a fair question, and I think the answer is rather obvious.
Yeah. My mom's in Colorado. I don't want them to frickin' reopen Colorado. Every day I'm like, you're not going out. You're not going out. You're not going. Well, I mean, she's 87, so I don't want her frickin' going out.
God bless her, and I hope she lives to be 107. I mean,
now as far as I agree with you. I don't agree. I mean, there's a lot I'm not going to argue with you about, but I agree with you that the people who don't like Trump, including me, really don't like Trump. The one thing I will disagree with you about is I haven't heard Biden every day, but I've heard Biden a few times over the past few weeks, and he sounded completely lucid to me. He didn't sound like he was, lost in the woods. So.
Rick,
well, I mean, you will agree then. I'm sorry, quick question then. You will agree that on the 31st of January, when the travel ban from China was instituted, while Nancy Pelosi was trying to block him from being able to do that, Joe Biden was calling him a xenophobe and saying it's no time for Hispanic.
Yeah, I guess, right? I mean, you guys have told me he said that. I don't remember him saying that, but given that he said that, then yeah, I disagree with that, because at the same time, I told Lance earlier, I manage my mother-in-law's money that she needs to live on for the rest of her life. And at the same time he was saying that and Trump was starting the travel ban, I was selling, all her securities, moving them into safe harbor, because I could tell that this shit was going to get bad. So,
good on you for seeing it coming.
I mean, it's good I wasn't in the Senate, because then I would have been insider trading. But No, wait, no, wait. You guys say I I don't believe he colluded with Russia. I believe that Russia was in the wanted him to win, and the Senate said so this week, including the committee led by Republicans. I believe that Trump was manipulated by Russia because he's used to working with business alliances. So I don't know. I don't think he colluded. I don't think he like got together with them to plot. But I do think he was manipulated by him, by
So the
the
fact that the
possibility
steel,
of business.
but so you don't think that the fact that the Steele dossier was commissioned by the Clinton campaign, and the fact that that was taken from possibly a guy who was spying, like literally, it's like the Clinton campaign was the one who commissioned the report and got it from a spy who worked with Russia. That is irrelevant. I mean, they actually
I
want to
know
tell you.
I've argued with Lance endlessly about that, and I'll give you that the Steele dossier is problematic in a lot of ways. But when you look at the rest of Trump's background, including his relationships with Russian oligarchs, the independent of the Steele dossier, and his wanting to build Trump Tower Moscow, and having wanting to be friends with Putin, and wanting and holding beauty pageants over there and everything. I feel like that Russia is good at at, at cultivating people, and I believe Trump was manipulated.
So
I
you don't think he was harsh on Russia in the policy wise? You don't
I
think that
think
the
he's
fact
been
that
a I think there sometimes he's been like Lance likes to bring up that there was this incident in Syria. Is it Syria?
correct?
Where we killed what may have been hundreds of Russian mercenaries who may not have been mercenaries, but may have been Russian soldiers just pretending to be mercenaries. And Lance says, "How can you fucking kill so many Russians and still be friends with Russia?" And I don't buy that argument about that. We were attacked by those guys. And so, of course, we're going to fire back on them. And we don't even know the chain of. I mean, we know the we don't even know who was making the decisions at various times. So I don't buy that Trump is not friends with Russia just because we killed a bunch of Russians in that incident, in that battle. I think there are plenty of other areas where he's been not so tough on Russia.
Like what? I mean, it's not like he was caught on open mic telling Putin to first in the command saying, "I'll have more leverage
Yeah,
after
yeah,
the election."
yeah. No, but like
So
when he was reluctant, and any kind of arguments I make, kind of, I always have to say that I'm pretty ignorant. I'm not completely informed about, but like that when he was really dragging his feet on passing the sanctions that had been approved by the House and Senate against Russia almost unanimously.
hmm
Um, that or there was the whole deal with like showing, I don't know, now that this could be just because he's not experienced in statecraft, when he showed the Russian ambassador some stuff that was classified and stuff like, I mean, there's um
I would.
so
These are not impressive examples, Rick.
okay,
I've
but
been
but
trying to
again,
get
they're
some
from a
proof.
guy who doesn't.
I
Anyway, I
I've
still
been
think
trying to get you to give me proof for 3 years now that Trump was working with the Russians, and you haven't been able to.
well, you keep saying that I believe Trump colluded with Russia. And I've now said it like twice in the last 10 minutes that I don't think he colluded. I think he's been kind of manipulated by
Yeah,
Russia.
actually, Rick, for 2 years, I can bring up 25 videos where you said he was colluding with Russia,
Can you?
and
I don't think you can from like
and we would end every show with you saying, "Well, wait and see. The truth will come out with these investigations." And then they never did. There's never been any proof. As a matter of fact, the only thing that they have found is that the dossier was written by Russian intelligence. And this week it
well,
turned out that and this week it turned out that the source for the dossier was a Hillary Clinton supporter. And
Okay,
this was
but
revealed in the revealed footnotes from the Inspector General's report.
well, so okay,
So
but
for
what
two
about the
years,
Senate?
for
What
two
about the
years,
Senate? What about what happened in the Senate this week, where the committee looking into the 2016 election, led by Republicans, agreed that Russia had been in favor and trying to interfere in had tried to get Trump elected.
I am not aware of them trying to
I guess
get
I must have
Trump
missed that
elected.
because I thought it was exactly the opposite. I thought they actually
Yeah,
found out that it was Hillary that they were supporting.
that's
No,
Absolutely.
what I
no, no.
saw. That's what I
Now
heard
who's
too.
not getting
Something
the news?
Can
No,
you show us
The
the article?
Republican-led committee
Uh-huh.
looking into it has agreed that Russia
Let's
wanted
have a
Trump to
look at
win.
it. Show us. We're going to look it up right now. Can you
All right,
find us
so
an article?
then you got to give me. I got to run upstairs to my computer and look it up. So we're going to
Well,
break for.
we could type it in if you want.
Uh, d- d- d-
I mean,
well,
if
I
you
Let
want
me
want
to
to
let me
read
pull
some
it up
research it.
on
myself.
my
So,
laptop.
all right, give me 4 minutes.
All right,
4 minutes.
all right. We'll take a break.
Okay. That especially
Well, I mean,
and
with
actually
with what
go ahead.
the various intelligence agencies, at the very least, the bombarding of everybody with like social media messaging designed to get everybody riled up and
The social media messaging, I think, that was proven to be something around like 100,000 or $300,000 worth. I mean, it wasn't really
yeah, but I mean
significant
that's
enough. And I don't think anybody
it's
changed their mind based on social media messaging.
I
But
don't know.
also,
I
I think
remember being infuriated by messaging that pretended like there was one Twitter account called Tennessee GOP that just got me so worked up. And it turned out to be a fake Russian frickin' one of their straw puppets. Um, so I mean, if I were gonna, I mean, it's the cheapest way to frickin' make people crazy. Spend 300 grand. There's this building in St. Petersburg where a bunch of hackers are coming up, or not but social hackers, like people
right,
who are writing tweets. And I used to work in, coming up with jokes for TV, and I felt like it's probably the same deal. Like my job, we would laugh our asses off all day just trying to come up with stuff that we would get a reaction from people. And I can imagine that building in St. Petersburg, they were coming up with tweets all day and laughing, and they probably had like really good snacks compared to people at most jobs in Russia. And for $300,000, you can get, if you get clever people, you can get stuff that will be amplified across social media platforms.
Rick, I think you're making an excellent case for not eliminating the electoral college because I think I've heard a lot of people saying, well, Hillary won the popular vote and Trump won the electoral vote, therefore we need to abolish the electoral college. And I think what you just said actually makes a great case for maintaining that because you don't know where or how many votes you need to steal because when you're sending out messages like this, it may, like in your case, you said it made you angry. So it didn't change your mind towards, it actually made you against. So I think when you're saying they tried to influence the election in Trump's favor, how would they know what exactly to message and towards whom in order to achieve the response that they're looking for?
Well, they did a bunch of they would pile, according to what I've read, they would pile onto controversy to get people even more riled up because they were not only trying to get people to not vote for Hillary, they were trying to get people to, if they couldn't get a vote for Trump, at least they could get people to not vote for Hillary, to not show up, or to vote for like a Jill Stein or the Green Party guy, or no, it was the Libertarian guy, the Stoner guy. Um,
I don't remember which one it is, but I know what you're referring to.
um, so I mean, a lot of it is just like stirring up the anthill. Um, and I don't know. I just think that it's we hear stuff on TV and we don't believe it. Everybody is skeptical of what they hear on television news now, right? Fake news
I hope
this
so.
and fake news.
I hope
I
so.
don't trust Fox News. You don't trust MSNBC. Nobody trusts TV because TV has been around for 60, no, for almost 80 years. And we're sophisticated about TV. We don't
Right.
necessarily trust its messages. But social media is new. And I think that messaging, it can affect us more. I think it's more effective at getting us riled up, and because it's we're not entirely sophisticated about it yet. And so I can be tricked by this Twitter account and go crazy. I wrote them so many angry messages. And it turns out I was just writing to some, you know, Russian wise guy.
Right. But again, I don't see how that would affect an entire campaign altogether. I mean, because I mean, Hillary on its on her, I mean, on its face by the way she ran her campaign, the way it her message got out. I mean, when she stood in there in front of people and called half the country deplorable, like that to me made her pretty much, to quote
All
somebody,
right,
I
so
feel
I
like
mean,
a garbage. Go ahead.
she made a
No,
lot
because
of
to me
mistakes.
she was a bad candidate, and she took a lot of the
Yeah,
her voters for granted. Because a lot of the reason I think that people didn't show up for her as she
yeah,
expected.
she didn't come to this. A lot of the swing states that she lost
Correct,
by 30,000, she didn't visit. She thought she had them. So I mean,
correct.
it was a
People who showed up
horrible
for
election.
Obama,
It was a
right?
horrible
People who showed up
election in
for Obama,
part.
she took them for granted. Yes,
It was hard. One problem with the election is you have the two least popular candidates in history running against each other. The two
right,
candidates with the highest disapproval. Most presidential elections, there's somebody with
right,
a lot of charisma, and it makes for a less ugly. I mean, Trump has charisma, but it's a kind of brutal charisma. Like,
right.
but like frickin', Kennedy was charming, and um, Clinton, whatever you think of his personal behavior, was charming, and Bush. Everybody wants to have a beer with Bush. There's usually a guy somebody in the election that is likable. And 2016, both candidates had super high dislikes. It's not a whole, it's slightly, Joe Biden comes out being about 10 points more likable right now compared to Hillary at the same point in 2016. So it might be a slightly less, I don't know. We'll see. It's
I still find it very difficult to wrap my brain around two or $300,000 worth of ads on uh, Facebook or whatever being able to influence an entire election in a country such as ours. Um, I think there are much more significant factors. For instance, the idea of ballot harvesting. Now they're trying to institute everybody can vote by mail, and people are like, well, you can vote by mail because the military has always done that. Well, military is a very small, specific, verified group.
I
If
want to
you
I want to argue with you about that, but we've been going for 2 hours. I think we should
Okay,
probably. Can you come
okay,
back
that
next week and we'll frickin' talk about that stuff?
sure. Give me a heads up for next week, and I'll be happy to come back on.
All right. Thank you, Maya. Lance. What you got some semi-closing thoughts?
Yeah, I'm reading the exact opposite,
What are you
Rick.
reading?
So
No,
you've been lied to. I'm I'm
tell
reading
me
the exact
specifically
opposite. The
what you're
Senate did
reading.
not
What?
conclude. I'm reading the Fox News analysis of the same exact report.
And what does Fox News
And
say?
your report is they're saying that the if anything, John Brennan suppressed intelligence that the Russians favored Clinton. And furthermore, that's backed up by the IG
That's not.
report.
Then I'm not
Footnotes. Don't
buying
interrupt
that.
me.
I'm
Don't
not
interrupt me.
frickin'
Don't
buying
interrupt
that.
me. Don't interrupt me. Don't interrupt me. a week ago I told you that the
5 times.
footnotes that were finally revealed from the IG report backed up the fact that the Russians wanted Clinton to win. That was in the Inspector General's report. It was just
All
opened
right,
up.
that's just crazy. All right,
No, I told you it was footnote
all right, then
347 of the Inspector General's report. I even
yeah,
found it in
it's
the
one
document.
footnote that
No, but there were
I
more.
know, but when you
There were
look at
more.
all the news reports,
Yeah, yeah,
except for
yeah.
maybe
But
Fox.
Rick, your media lied to you again. I read the actual document. I read the actual Inspector General's documents last week to you, where it
No,
said
no,
that
no, no. This
that
is
the source
crazy
for the
bullshit.
Steele dossier
Hold
was
on.
the source for for the Steele dossier was a Russian that strongly supported Hillary Clinton. And that's what the report says. The
Hello, hold
Republicans
on,
do
hold on,
not
hold on.
believe
We're about to
that
get shut
Putin
down. Carol's
was
about to.
trying to get Trump elected. Your media is lying to you.
All right, here, bipartisan Senate report reaffirms intelligence findings that Russia meddled in 2016 elections. Um, Senate Intel Russia probe enters key unanimous approval. Um,
Yeah, but Rick, they've lied. They've lied. Nobody's denying that Russia interferes in American elections. But your media lied to you and said that they were trying to get Trump elected. Your
um,
media lied to you, Rick. And that's not what the Inspector General's report said. I gave you the footnotes last week.
yeah, but that's just one fucking footnote that said one Russian guy wanted
That was
Hillary to
the
win.
FBI. That was the FBI's report. The FBI reported that that the source for the Steele dossier, the person that helped Steele write the dossier, was a Russian in a high-level person in the Putin government, and that he strongly supported Hillary Clinton. So
All
the
right.
truth is the opposite of what you just said.
No, you're on this. You're completely full of shit because the Senate issued its report and they say they agree with the intel analysis that Russia wanted Trump to win.
What
And
you're
I got
making
to
that
say,
up,
I
Rick. I
mean,
need to see that. I want to see that. I
Is
want to
that an
see that.
opinion or is that actual report?
That's Rick's opinion.
no, it's the fucking actual report. I'll show you here.
I want to
Hold
see
on,
the
I'll fucking
document.
show you.
I showed him the document last week, Maya, but that wasn't good
Okay.
enough. Showing him the actual Inspector General's report made no impression on Rick whatsoever.
Oh,
Welcome
come
to
on,
our
Lance, could you
fucking
do
show.
me a
Lance,
favor? Could
Lance,
you email me that link, please?
Hold
Yeah,
on.
I'll do
Here's
that for you.
All right, thanks.
fucking.
I'm
I
going to
don't know
show
if
you
you can see
the
this.
actual Inspector General's report.
Here's I googled Senate Intelligence Committee Russia investigation, and any of these fucking reports will. Anyway, I don't know if you can see the fucking screen or not, but there you go. Hello. Oh, you can't even. I'm not even up
Yeah.
right now. Hold on. Fucking. All right.
All right, gentlemen, are we calling it a night or?
Yeah, let's call it a night.
All right,
All
I'm
right.
going to send you the email. How do I get it
All
to
right.
you, Maya?
All right. Thanks, Lance. I mean, JD. I mean, Director. Can you cut?
Hey, wait a minute.
All right. Thanks.
Wait. Can you please ask people for money, Rick?
Okay. Yeah. So we can continue to do this. You can send us money at our PayPal address, which is lancevsrick@gmail.com. lancevsrick@gmail. And thank you.
All right.
Maya, thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it.